The historical mindful movement will share historical information that happened on the same date and month from year to year. This is so that the history we learn can make us appreciate the past and trigger us to do better in the future. Historical mindful movement begs not to click the like and subscribe buttons on this channel. On April 24, 1656, Thomas Fincke died at the age of 95. He is a mathematician and physicist who is recognized as a top professor at the University of Copenhagen for more than 60 years. Thomas Fincke's achievements are found in his book entitled Geometria Rotundi in 1583. In the book, Fincke introduced the modern names of tangent and secant trigonometric functions. In mathematics, a trigonometric function is a real function that relates the angle of a right triangle to the ratio of its two side lengths. Trigonometric functions are widely used in all geometry-related sciences, such as navigation, solid mechanics, celestial mechanics, geodesy and many others. On April 24, 1895, Joshua Slocum became the first person to sail around the world alone. He sailed from Boston, Massachusetts with his ship called the Spray. In 1900, Slocum wrote a book about his travels entitled Sailing Alone Around the World. This book later became an international bestseller. Joshua Slocum disappeared in November 1909 while on board his ship called the Spray after sailing from Vineyard Haven, Massachusetts to South America. The Spray is an oyster lifeboat measuring 11.20 meters. On April 24, 1913, the Woolworth Building in New York City opened. The Woolworth Building is New York City's oldest and most famous skyscraper. This building was designed by architect Cass Gilbert. The Woolworth Building was the tallest building in the world from 1913 until 1930 with a height of 241 meters. More than a century after its construction, it remains one of the 100 tallest buildings in the United States. The Woolworth Building's record height was surpassed by the 40 Wall Street Building, which officially opened on May 26, 1930. The 40 Wall Street Building is also known as the Trump Building. On April 24, 1914, James Franck and Gustav Ludwig Hertz presented their research on the pillars of quantum mechanics to the German Physical Society. Their research became known as the Franck-Hertz experiment. The Franck-Hertz experiment is the first measurement of electricity to clearly demonstrate the quantum properties of atoms. The results of this experiment proved the truth of Bohr's theory, which had been proposed the previous year by Niels Bohr. Franck and Hertz's early experiments used a heated vacuum tube containing a drop of mercury. They reported a tube temperature of 115 degrees C, at which mercury vapor pressure was about 100 pascals. On December 10, 1925, Franck and Hertz were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for discovering the law governing the impact of electrons on atoms. On April 24, 1924, Granville Stanley Hall died at the age of 80. He is a psychologist who is known as the first president of the American Psychological Association. Hall was one of the founders of the children's learning movement in the 1880s. His interests focus on childhood development and the theory of evolution. Hall was also the first American to receive a doctorate in psychology in Germany with his dissertation entitled The Muscular Perception of Space. A review of general psychology survey published in 2002 ranked Hall as the 72nd most cited psychologist of the 20th century. On April 24, 1926, Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Berlin Treaty. They promised to be neutral in the event of attacks against third parties over the next 5 years. On April 24, 1945, Ernst-Robert Grawitz died at the age of 45. He is a doctor known as part of the group responsible for the murder of people with mental and physical disabilities in the Action T4 program. Researchers who wish to use prisoners in German concentration camps for research subjects must submit an initial application to Grawitz, where it will be forwarded to Heinrich Himmler as final approval. As the Soviet army advanced on Berlin, Grawitz committed suicide along with his family by pulling the pins from 2 grenades he had kept under the table at dinner. The incident was featured in the 2004 German film Der Untergang, in which Grawitz was played by Christian Honning. On April 24, 1955, the Asia-Africa Conference closed. As many as 29 countries representing more than half of the world's population at that time supported world peace and cooperation as stated in the 10 Principles of Bandung. This conference eventually led to the formation of the Non-Aligned Movement in 1961. On April 24, 1960, Max Theodor Felix von Laue died at the age of 80. He is the physicist who first discovered the X-ray diffraction of a crystal in 1912. The X-ray diffraction method is one way to study the order of atoms or molecules in a particular structure. Max von Laue's observations of X-ray diffraction in 1912 confirmed for most scientists that X-rays are a form of electromagnetic radiation. His X-ray diffraction findings were an important step for the development of X-ray spectroscopy. For this achievement, Max von Laue was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1914. On April 24, 1964, Gerhard Johannes Paul Domagk died at the age of 68. He is a pathologist and bacteriologist who is known as the discoverer of sulfonamidicrysogine. Sulfonamidicrysogine is the first antibiotic commercially available, and is marketed under the brand name Perncosil. Sulfonamidicrysogine is effective against bacterial infections, such as pneumococcus, which causes pneumonia. For this achievement, Gerhard Domagk was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1939. On April 24, 1967, Vladimir Mikhailovich Komarov died at the age of 40. He is a pilot, engineer and astronaut who is known as the first Soviet cosmonaut to fly into space, twice when he was selected as the sole pilot of Soyuz 1. The Soyuz 1 is the first crewed flight of the Soyuz spacecraft. Komarov died on the flight due to the parachute failing to open. It hit the ground, at a speed of 30 to 40 meters per second in Orenburg, which is the Russia-Kazakhstan border. Komarov's death on board Soyuz 1 was recorded as the first death in spaceflight history. In his honor, he was awarded the Hero of the Soviet Union twice, one of which was awarded posthumously. On April 24, 1970, China launched Dongfang Hong 1. This made China the fifth country to place objects into Earth orbit using its own boosters. With a weight of 173 kilograms, this satellite is heavier than the first satellite of other countries. The satellite carrying this radio transmitter broadcasts the song of the same name for 26 days while in orbit. On April 24, 1971, Frans Soemarta Mendur died at the age of 58. He is one of the photographers who captured the seconds of the proclamation of the independence of the Republic of Indonesia on August 17, 1945. Frans Soemarta Mendur took this historic event together with his siblings, namely Alexius Impurang Mendur. They, together with Justus Umbas, Frans Umbas, Alex Memusang and Oscar Ganda, then founded Indonesia Press Photo Service on October 2, 1946. On April 24, 1990, Space Shuttle Discovery STS-31 took off into space carrying the Hubble telescope, which has a diameter of 2.4 meters and a focal length of 57.6 meters. The Hubble telescope is a space telescope that was launched into low Earth orbit in 1990 and is still in operation today. The name Hubble is taken from the name of an American astronomer, Edwin Powell Hubble. The Hubble telescope was not the first space telescope, but it was one of the largest, most versatile and best known as a very important research tool at the time. Hubble's orbit beyond the distortion of Earth's atmosphere makes it possible to capture very high-resolution images with a much lower backlight than ground-based telescopes. With a catchment area of 4,525 square meters, this telescope is capable of recording several images in great detail. Many of Hubble's observations have led to breakthroughs in astrophysics, such as determining the expansion rate of the universe. Hubble is the only telescope designed to be maintained in space by astronauts. 5 space shuttle missions have repaired, upgraded and replaced the telescope's systems. The Hubble telescope is operational until 2020, and can last until 2030–2040. Its successor is the James Webb Space Telescope, which is slated to launch in March 2021. On April 24, 1990, Michael Newbert Jr., as the ex-Minister of Defence, officially declares that the island of Gruinard, Scotland is free of anthrax after 48 years of quarantine. Gruinard Island is a small, oval-shaped Scottish island about 2 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide. Gruinard Island is located in Gruinard Bay. The closest point to the land is about 1 kilometer offshore. The island is dangerous to all mammals after a biological weapons warfare experiment with anthrax bacteria was carried out during the Second World War in 1942. The test was led by British military scientists from the Porton Down Department of Biology. The anthrax strain selected was a highly virulent strain known as Volume 14578. The test was carried out by bringing 80 sheep to Gruinard Island and detonating a bomb containing anthrax spores near the moored sheep. 80 of the sheep was infected with anthrax and began to die within days of exposure. The trial results concluded that the large release of anthrax spores in German cities could render them uninhabitable for decades to come. This conclusion is supported by the inability of the British government to decontaminate Gruinard Island after the biological weapons experiment. This is because anthrax spores last quite a long time from the decontamination process. For years, the decontamination process was deemed too dangerous and costly to restore public access to Gruinard Island. In the end, Gruinard Island was quarantined indefinitely and visits to the island were prohibited, except for periodic checks. Starting in 1986, persistent efforts were made to decontaminate the island by spraying 280 tons of formaldehyde solution diluted with seawater all over the 196-hectare part of Gruinard Island. On May 1, 1990, the island was bought back by the heirs from the original owner for the original sale price of £500. This was done after Gruinard Island was declared safe from a flock of sheep that remained healthy after being placed on the island previously. On April 24, 1997, Eugene Morrison Stoner died at the age of 74. He is an engineer known as the designer of the Armalite AR-15 rifle. The Armalite AR-15 is designed as a small-caliber, submachine gun capable of firing high-speed cartridges. This advantage allows the infantry to carry more ammunition. In the end, the Armalite AR-15 was adopted by the US military as the M16 rifle, which began production in March 1964. Over time, the M16 became one of the legendary firearms in the world. On May 16, 1990, Eugene Morrison Stoner and Mikhail Timofeyevich Kalashnikov met for the first time. Each of them held a legendary rifle that they designed themselves, namely the AR-15 and AK-47. On April 24, 2003, Hatice Nuzhet died at the age of 92. She is an astronomer and mathematician who is known as Turkey's first female astronomer. On April 24, 2005, Snuppy was born in South Korea. It is the first dog clone made using cells from the ears of a 3-year-old Afghan breed dog with empty eggs. After the egg cell divides and develops into an embryo, the embryo is eventually transferred to 123 parent donors. Although only 3 embryos succeeded in developing, Snuppy was the only survivor. The cloning process, which took nearly 3 years, was the result of research by scientists at Seoul National University led by Hwang Woo-suk. The name Snuppy is taken from Seoul National University and Puppy. Time magazine that year named Snuppy as the most amazing discovery. The results showed that there was no significant difference between cloned dogs and ordinary dogs. The cloned dog's lifespan is equivalent to that of a typical Afghan breed, which can survive an average of 11.9 years. On April 24, 2011, WikiLeaks leaked the Guantanamo Bay file. One of the data in the document states that as many as 150 Afghan people who are not linked to acts of terrorism are in prison, at the Guantanamo detention camp. Those who are innocent but arrested are Afghan citizens, who work as farmers, cooks, or drivers. The Guantanamo detention camp is a United States military facility for detaining terrorists without trial. On April 24, 2013, Muhammad Jefri Al Buchori died at the age of 40. He is a preacher, singer and actor known as Ustadz Yu. Yu died in a single accident in the Pondok Indah area, South Jakarta. He hit a tree, after losing control of the Kawasaki R6 and he was driving. That's the history that happened on April 24th. If there is history that you just found out about, please write in the comments column. Thank you.